This Week in Startups is brought to you by Audible.com, a leading provider of spoken audio information and entertainment. Listen to audiobooks whenever and wherever you want. Visit audible.com/twist for your free audiobook. Our iTunes review of the week is from SD Cody. It's my muse for creative problem solving. Jason is not afraid to ask the questions that we all have been wondering. If you're a fan of Twist, please leave us a nice review on iTunes.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm Jason Calacanis and we're here at RGA Studios, RGA Ventures in Manhattan, my hometown, New York. It's great to be back home, and I am so excited with my next guest. It's one of my oldest friends and one of the greatest thinkers I know. Douglas Rushkoff is here on the heels of his amazing new book, Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus. Welcome to the program,
hey,
Doug Rushkoff.
Good to be with you.
My God,
yeah.
One of my oldest friends in New York.
Indeed. And truest,
yes, legit friendship.
Actually, we got each other's backs in strange situations.
Exactly. Yeah. For people who don't know, you've written a lot of books. You've thought a lot about media. And your column is for Silicon Valley Reporter. You did a bunch of Frontline episodes, my favorite program, Frontline, love that. And now, what are you spending your time on now? I know you had consulted for a lot of brands. That was kind of quietly you did that?
Well, it was more, go in one day and tell them, why don't you just drop the brand and be honest about the product, that kind of stuff. Get the CEO to cry with me and, return to their core competency, that sort of thing. Yeah.
And so now you're writing books and you decided to write this one, Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus. Why this book, and what is it about?
Well, like you say, I was excited, as you were, late 80s, early 90s, at FidoNet and the internet and all the possibilities for a new culture and peer-to-peer trade and society, everything new and great and fascinating, and was kind of dragged kicking and screaming from the culture, society, tech page onto the business page. Right. That was probably the last time AOL, the last time Time Warner was being bought. Right. It was, I had done no business writing. Then AOL wants to go buy Time Warner. New York Times, David Shipley calls me up and says, will you write the op-ed on what this means that AOL is going to buy Time Warner? So I write this op-ed saying, it means the dot-com boom is going to be the bust. It means Steve Case is cashing in his chips to buy something real. The whole thing's over. This is it. And he said, we can't print this. The whole business department, the whole business section says this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, that the synergies, the internet's arrived. What are you thinking? You're crazy. And I'm like, no, I promise this is what's going on. He's like, you're a media theorist. What do you know?
Right.
So I published
media theorist, they just asked you.
Yeah, but that's because I was looking at it as a media theorist, not as a business guy, because I was looking at it from the tech side, where it was obvious what was going on, in terms of the programs and the compatibility. So then that happened, and it became more important as this sort of, the more Wired magazine, attention economy, long boom, Silicon Valley in-investment ethos really tended to overshadow the original internet ethos. I kind of had to write, for a business audience about, look what you're doing right, but look what you're doing wrong,
And people forget this, but the internet was a counterculture platform. It was looked at in the early days as something that would make society more just, that would enable people who didn't have a voice to have a voice, but something got corrupted. Or is that still existing, and both exist? The corrupt, version of enterprise on the internet and powered by technology, and there's still an underground? Or did people just give up on it?
Well, it's weird. I was thinking a lot about that. When the internet was fringe culture, threatening mainstream culture, then it was more like the equivalent of putting Bart Simpson or South Park on TV. Right. Once we hooked up money to the internet, then it changes. So now having fringe culture on there means, my banking is not safe. Yeah. Having fringe business on there means, Wall Street is not safe. So it really changed it. The net had to become way more serious once it was really, it became the poster child for the salvation of the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. Right. In 1987, there was the biotech boom and bust. Then Wired came and other prognosticators and said, don't worry, the internet will increase the surface area on the marketplace, so now we'll get infinite expansion again.
Right.
And it didn't work. We got the dot-com, boom and bust. Then we got social media, which again started to look interesting to me. Right. Culture, blogging, Evan Williams, we're all going to just talk and play. You did weblogs and all. Right. This was like, oh my God, content is back. We're back. The people, we're talking, we're changing. Sure. And then, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute. Social can become the new business because data is now valuable.
Right.
So all these kids who have no money, don't worry, you don't have to pay with money. You can pay with your data. So now, as I look at it, we're in this data glut. Advertising, marketing, market research has never taken up more than 3 or 4% of GDP. But we're expecting Facebook and Google and Twitter and all these companies and these giant valuations to depend on data. And it's just, that's not the ultimate exit strategy.
And these companies, though, have become global. The internet has become global. And this device, nobody really anticipated that broadband would come to this device and we'd be able to watch HBO, or that this thing Netflix wouldn't be shipping us DVDs, but it would be actually producing the best television or some of the best television available.
Yeah, which is another, I love it, don't get me wrong. I love that. Amazon's making content. As someone who likes watching TV and hopefully gets to sometimes make TV, couldn't be better. But I understand that this is artificial, that there's these huge war chests of VC trying to help these different companies leverage. Right. Netflix spent what on content? How many billion?
It's going to be a couple billion this year, 2 or 3 billion.
I know. So, in the end, they're spending their war chest to try to get, it's Netflix versus HBO versus Amazon to see who can dominate this space. But in the end, most of the time, it seems to be only one kind of platform monopoly player that comes in and rules the day.
Right. So the book, let's talk a little bit about it, the title.
Yeah.
It was a surreal moment in San Francisco when these black buses started rolling around and driving people, high-paid employees, from San Francisco down to the Google headquarters, the Facebook headquarters. And it was an even more bizarre sight to see people, anarchists protesting it, anti-capitalists protesting the Google bus. One of them vomited on the bus. One of them broke the windows.
Yeah.
Why is that such a seminal moment for you?
Well, for me, it epitomizes the way that, well-meaning though they may have been, that Google's growth is not translating into prosperity on the ground. So Google's employees, I understand they want to live in San Francisco. It's a cool place. So San Francisco becomes almost like a Hollywood backdrop to Silicon Valley, but the prosperity of the company is not making the region prosperous. Right. So the programmers live there, the rents in the area double, triple, quadruple.
More than New York.
More than New York. If you're in the area near a bus stop, it's 30% even higher than it is everywhere else. And now people look at these, these buses, these private buses using public bus stops to transport these kind of alien employees back to the mothership. It epitomized the way a company with so much promise, two kids in their Stanford dorm room coming up with an algorithm to take down Yahoo, which you and I remember, they were the big bad guys. Yahoo, they're going to organize, right, and they're going to organize the net for us from the top down. Yeah. This was going to be a bottom-up, people-driven, link-to-link algorithm.
Index the world's knowledge.
Exactly, and then these two kids become part of that, it seems anyway, part of the NSA, part of Wall Street, part of the biggest, baddest kind of guys on the block. They're not even Google, they're Alphabet. So they're not even a technology company, but they're a holding company. And the way it grew and abstracted, it felt as if the company was pursuing growth for growth's sake rather than its original mission of enabling the bottom-up, people-driven revolution that they were born in.
Okay, when we get back from after this very important break, I want to talk to you about what are the solutions for a world in which income disparity and the polarization of wealth has really just is, I guess, the topic of the day. When we get back, what are some of the solutions with Doug Rushkoff? Let me take a moment to tell you all about one of my favorite services in the world, Audible. Yes, I spend time in a car, I spend time on airplanes, in the back of Ubers, and I need to be learning constantly. So I use Audible. I have a platinum edition, and I download books by the dozen. I'm not kidding. And then I flip back and forth between them, whether my mood is for history and learning more about the world. I've been listening to this very interesting book called Sapiens, or I want to listen to something from people in our industry and learn from a classic like Good to Great, or sometimes I just want to have something like Shadow Divers or some interesting non-fiction book that I can get into, right? I want to give you one book I've read that is just amazing, and it's A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy by William Irvine. It's very important, I think, for entrepreneurs to listen to this book. Now, you'd say Stoicism, a school of philosophy. Why would you recommend that, Jason? Don't you have something about growing my email list, or 0 to 1, or Good to Great, or the 5 dysfunctions of a team? These things that are more practical. Well, here's the thing. Stoicism is something that lives inside of you. It's your ability to appreciate what you have and to manage the things you have control over, the things you don't have control over, and the things that, in a very challenging way, you have partial control over. And, it had a big effect on me. It doesn't mean I'm a Stoic, but it means you can be more Stoic in your approach to life and appreciate what you have. It's a really, really great book. You also want to check out Smarter, Faster, Better, The Man Who Knew Affinity. I've been listening to The Hobbit with my daughter. I told you guys about that. And you can get all of this for free at audible.com/twist, audible.com/TWIST. Get your 30-day trial membership. And you can download my book of the week by going there. Creativity Inc. is another great one. We had Ed Catmull on the program. It took Emmy Award-winning producer Jackie over a year to get him on the program, and boy, was that worth it, because the book is so, so good. You know this already, but you can use Audible on your iPhone, your iPad, Android, and Windows, and you own your books, which is great. And they have Whisper Sync, which lets you sync between your audiobook and your Kindle. I read in the car. I read on my headphones. I've been going for these walks trying to lose a little bit of weight, so I got my Fitbit, and then I listen to my Audible. It's a great way to kill an hour or two, get smarter, get healthier, get out there, do your walking, get your 10,000 steps. And you know what? Try to listen to 2 books a month. That's my challenge for you. That's what I try to do. I try to do 2 books a month because I want to be smarter. And every smart person I've ever met in my life, you know what they have in common? Aside from being friends with me? They read books. Smart people read books. If you stop reading books because you're too busy, it's time for you to get back on the wagon and start reading at least a book a month. My recommendation, 2 books a month. Go to audible.com/twist. Thank you, Audible, for making a great product. I love it. Okay, let's get back to this episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. My guest, Doug Rushkoff, the one and only, and his new book, Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus. We're talking about income inequality, disparity. When we look at the election this year, it seems like the emergence of these outsider candidates in some way confirms your theory that some people are getting left behind, and these big companies, people are getting incredibly wealthy. Is the technology revolution and this massive wealth creation that occurs in technology what you think the Trump phenomenon and the Bernie Sanders phenomenon, are they related?
They're related in that, digital technology has amplified the effects, the negative effects of investment capitalism.
Right.
And the real problem is that there are these great new ideas, great companies that once they take investment, they're tending first to take too much investment. As you know, they're trying to overcapitalize. They end up with these valuations that are really too large, and then the goal of the company becomes to sell the stock of the company. How do we flip the company?
Right.
Rather than how do we create a great, sustainable, revenue-based company. Now that's partly the problem of a tax code that rewards capital gains and punishes dividends. So shareholders don't want dividends. You don't want earnings. I want to know, when can I sell the thing? What's my sellable event?
Exit strategy.
What's my exit strategy? So if you're creating a company to exit, then you have a very different mindset than creating a company for long-term success. So you tend not to look at your marketplace as something to sustain, but you look at your marketplace as something to monopolize and then either flip or pivot into another market. So when Amazon picked the book industry, it's not because they love books, it's because, as you well know, the book industry is just a non-growth-based, inefficient, plodding along industry. So you can very easily take over one like that with the kinds of efficiencies, and if you have a war chest, it's the same sort of strategy that a Walmart will take, where you go into a neighborhood, undercut everybody, become the sole employer, and drain the money out. So what I'm arguing, and what I'm trying to show in here really, and I've got 10 or 15 ways to do it, are how do you shift from a growth-based business strategy to a revenue-based business strategy? Or how do you look at the economy less in terms of growth and more in terms of really optimizing for the velocity of money? So not the extraction of capital and its conversion into share price, but the velocity of money. And that really requires people who are going to look at their companies as things they want to actually run rather than as just ideas that they want to financialize. And once you look at it that way, it becomes easy. It's not about I'm not a socialist. It's not about redistributing the spoils of capitalism after the fact. It's about predistributing the means of production before the fact. So that's things like platform cooperatives, where the workers actually own a piece of the company, not just a little bizarre incentives package or some options on something. But, what if the drivers of Uber own 50% of the company? Then, yes, they're doing R&D for the robotic cars that will replace them, but now they own that company.
Right.
What about going, and you talk about this too, what about going from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week?
Right.
All of a sudden, now you've got 20%, more job availability. What if you extend the college break? These are simple solutions that don't really cost anybody anything in the real way. All you have to do is look in the economy. Well, what's scarce in a highly automated society? What's scarce is the labor.
Right.
Is that a bad thing? That's a good thing, not a bad thing, but we can't see it that way.
But whatever's happening now, it feels different than what happened before. Some people argue, hey, we got through the Industrial Revolution, we got through the Information Revolution, we'll get through the AI and robotic revolution. And then another group of people are saying, well, wait a second, I'm not so sure. This time actually could be different. This could be the black swan where maybe we do get rid of jobs this time. Maybe AI is just so powerful and robotics is so powerful that self-driving cars, Cafe X and coffee machines that are run by robots, and AI that does legal documents, maybe this is the time that we see just such a massive plunge in jobs that the developer jobs to write the code will go away. What do you believe and why?
I believe a little bit of both. I believe that even before automation, we were in a situation, I know that even before automation, we're in a situation where we're tearing down houses in California because they're in foreclosure.
Yep.
And we can't just let people live in those houses because they don't have a job.
Right.
So the reason to have a job is not because we actually need more stuff. The reason to have a job is so that we can justify letting you have the stuff that's already in abundance. In America, we burn food every week. The FDA, the Agriculture Department burns food to keep market prices high, while other people don't have enough to eat. This is just stupid, right? This is just stupid. So, partly it's flipping the script and starting to see things like unemployment not as a problem, but as a solution. And then employment itself is not even necessarily the best model for work. Employment, again, came out of the Industrial Revolution. People used to work. They just made stuff and traded, and they had a peer-to-peer economy. They only had to get employed once the peer-to-peer economy was made illegal. That's part of what I talk about in the book. The birth of the chartered monopoly, was saying, you're not allowed to be a shoemaker anymore. Now you have to work for His Majesty's Royal Shoe Company, and you'd be an employee. And time is money, and you'd punch the clock, and that's where we got today. So I do believe that we have the possibility for something different if we deploy digital technologies on behalf of people rather than on behalf of really old metrics. So right now, as I would put it, we're trying to run a 21st century digital economy on a 13th century economic operating system. So you look at a guy,
employment being the operating system.
Right. Exactly, or venture capital. So you look at a guy like Evan Williams, who could have very easily built Twitter without all that investment. And you looked at him, he had $4.3 billion under his face the morning he got the, IPO on Twitter. But so sadly, here's a company that makes $2 billion a year that's being considered an abject failure because their debt structure doesn't accommodate that.
Right.
Whereas if they had understood, there's another way to go about this. We could build this company in order to run it rather than build this company in order to flip it, then they don't need to show 100x return to each level of investor that's coming in this thing.
All right, when we get back from this final break, I want to ask you about millennials, because I know that you studied Gen X in depth. You had the book, Ecstasy Club.
And the Gen X Reader, and
Reader. So you
Playing the
studied
Future,
backwards. Now we have this other group of millennials. They're much different than us. You're part of Gen X, right? Or you can Yeah. Like, they seem much different than us, and I want you to tell me how they are contributing to this new world when we get back on This Week in Startups.
Thank you, Audible, for sponsoring This Week in Startups. You can download Douglas Rushkoff's book, Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus, for free by signing up for a 30-day trial at audible.com/twist.
Hey everybody, welcome back to This Week in Startups. We're here in New York City, my hometown, with one of my oldest friends, Doug Rushkoff. And thank you to my friends at RGA one more time for hosting us. This is incredible. They've been so great about hosting us here in New York. We needed a studio. They came in last minute and set it up, so thanks to RGA. And check out their RGA Ventures. They're doing a really interesting incubator. Give it a Google. All right, Doug, when we left, I wanted to talk to you about this generation. Millennials are much different than Gen X, and Gen X was a very unique group of people. A lot of Prozac, a lot of ecstasy, a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety amongst Gen Xers, but we wanted to change the world, but we were kind of half into working for the man. We wanted to be the man. And now you have this group of millennials, and I find myself in trying to work with them, dealing with a group of people who are incredibly confounding, but also inspiring in a way. They don't have skills necessarily, they don't want to put in hard work in some cases, but they are phenomenally passionate and mission-driven. But they don't, in a lot of cases, have the sensibility that they want to work themselves to death. They want to have quality experiences in life, not accumulate things. They don't want to go work for other people. It's a very unique group of people. How did we get here with these millennials, and what do you think the defining characteristic of them will be?
What's interesting, we Gen Xers were kind of counterculturally motivated. Even if we weren't counterculture, it's like we wanted to not belong somehow. We wanted to be the thing on the side, sort of poking at it, but still riding on the boat, but poking at it from the bottom. There was right. So it's just the idea of like we're not going to surrender. Right. There was that, no, we're not going to surrender to the thing, to the yuppie scum, whatever thing that is, to the monolith. The next generation is interesting. I know what you mean, that there's this kind of like precocious, impetuous, I'm ready to be CEO today. Yeah. I want the thing, and that's the part that's most annoying, right? That they're not willing to go through the hard work to get there. On the other hand, there's a willingness, I would argue that the media did this to them, or the new media did this to them. They don't have a willingness to go up, I used to do that chart, to go up Aristotle's inclined plane of anxiety to reach the end of the movie. Right. They're not going to go through a 3-act structure. They're not going to, they don't believe, follow me up the hill, charge into battle, do all this hard stuff, and then your great day will come. Then you'll get your payday. They're like, no, we want it now. And on the negative side, it's like, oh, they're not willing to do the work. On the positive side, what they're realizing is the ends never justify the means. That the only way to stop climate change is not as some goal. It's like, well, wait a minute, right now, let's stop this. And I want my experience of this company to be true right now. Right. Right now. And there's an intelligence in that, and if we can understand them as kind of as systems thinkers, as people who are looking at the entire company more like a fractal than a hierarchy, then they want to know, how does my piece reflect the entirety of this? If I'm sitting in a basement in the dark, suffering, not getting paid overtime to do this, then the whole organism of this company is somehow wrong. Right. That's sort of, and that's, it is. And it's untrue, but it's also true. Because it's like, if this person is smoking while complaining about the environment, something's wrong with this picture. So there's there's a quest for some kind of consistency. And, and it's not a moment too soon. given, I mean, I'm a believer that we're affecting the climate, that there's some serious stuff going on.
How do you believe that 257 of 257 scientists who agree with you, who have...
There's serious issues going on. So I kind of like that. Even that impatience is sort of worth something.
I'm almost jealous of them in a way, because I look back and I say, wow, and listen, I've charted my own course in life. I've been lucky in that way. But I look at them and they're like, wow, they really do think about the big picture. And they're like, yeah, this job isn't worth me giving up my friendships and my time with my family and my time to go experience stuff in the world. And yeah, I could fight with you for an extra $20K in salary. I'd rather have $20K less in salary and work 4 days a week, and I want 8 weeks vacation because I need to really go see Machu Picchu or the Great Wall. They're just so big picture, and they're thinking holistically about their lives, and they are not going to just get in line and do what's asked of them.
Yeah, I mean, and part of it is that we've moved away, in some fashion, we've moved away from an ownership society towards something much more like a commons. The old medieval commons. So you look, like you and me, for me, the object of the game was to collect the most records, 12-inch LPs, own music. To kids, they don't own music.
No,
you get access, right? You have Spotify, Pandora. All you want is access to the sounds you want when oh, sorry, I touched it.
Don't worry about it. No. I just want to make
made
sure
things go off. Yeah,
don't worry about it.
It's fine.
It's okay. My precious. It is like a very personal thing. Like
because it is the access. That is your access point.
It is who you are.
But when a kid
life.
understands music not as the music I own versus the music in the store, and rather as the music I have access to, in return for paying a monthly fee to participate in the production, ideally, of all this music, that's very, I hate to use the word, it's very communist. In a certain level, it's or at least it's commons oriented, that our entire music supply is a commons, and how are we going to participate in its maintenance?
And when you think about it, like they'll buy tickets to Coachella before knowing who the acts are. I always thought that was very interesting, because when we looked at music, you were very interested in a very specific genre or group of people, and if you were into goth and I was into metal, or you were into alt and I was into punk, or you were into, people really drew the lines. And they're just like, I'm into experiencing Coachella and getting dressed up and taking selfies. There's a narcissism and a experiential, I just want to experience it, which is great. The narcissism's a little bit annoying. I was down at the World Trade Center Memorial today, and I think a lot of the people who were there were probably 5 years old when 9/11 happened, because we're now, 15 years later. They might have, some of them might not have even been born. And I was watching this young group of girls smiling in front of the memorial and taking selfies. And for a minute I got upset, and then for another minute I was like, oh, they're just clueless.
Yeah, I know. I felt that when I watched the Pope's visit, and you see him going by, and all the kids he's trying to shake hands with all these children. He's there, and they're all just trying to selfie themselves. And that's partly generational, but that's also partly, it's a result of the companies. The smartest minds in captology and user manipulation are coming out of Stanford to make kids want to do selfies. That is a kind of a culture that's trained, if nothing else.
Right, because if they can get you to take the selfies and they have your location and they know who you are and they know who you're with, they can market to you better and make more money.
Right, and it's our participation in the surveillance economy, or in the attention economy, is really getting attention for ourselves. So, if a kid actually believes that having 2,000 likes on an Instagram picture is a kind of wealth, then that's what they're going to go for. Of course, for the company that they're working for, without realizing it, it is a kind of wealth.
It is absolutely correlated with wealth, because the more people who are engaged, the more the dollar signs go up. Let's talk about privacy. It's a good pivot. Is privacy just an illusion at this point? How far and deep do you think this goes? Because, we had Obama come in, he was going to change. It was the change we needed. It was, not to get all political or pick a party, but he does seem like a bit of a Republican conservative when it comes to a hawk and the surveillance state. And they never shut down Guantanamo.
I feel like anybody who gets in that job all of a sudden goes, oh my God, it's really scary out there. And I think they get more protectionist. But, when Eric Schmidt went to Google, those of us who observe these things knew, okay, this means it's going to be open to the NSA. Here's a top security clearance guy with all this stuff. We understood the bargain, the bargain that was being made there. In terms of surveillance, it's interesting to me. I mean, the positive side of surveillance, not that there's many, the positive side of surveillance is that as a result of the fact that we're all being watched, and they need us to be okay with that, to some level we have to be okay, they legalize pot, they make gay marriage okay. Yeah. So they're taking all of the taboo behaviors, the things that most people were most concerned about with privacy. The only thing when I was, what are they going to see? Oh, that I smoke pot. What are they going to see? Oh, that I'm gay. If you make those two things okay, then there's a whole lot less resistance to privacy. So I have a feeling on a certain level, the loss of privacy is forcing our society to be a little bit more honest about what we do and don't do.
That's an unintended consequence I didn't think of. And now when you look at WikiLeaks and Putin and whoever's behind these hacks, obviously WikiLeaks is publishing them, but WikiLeaks and Julian Assange do not have the ability to actually do these leaks. And they're not leaks, they're hacks. These were not, a whistleblower did not give this information to Julian Assange. A hacker with some motivation took a lot of effort to hack into some group of people's emails and then give it to them. What is that going to do to our society? The fact that every email that's ever been written is going to come out, and the idea that there is any privacy is over. Every communication you have is subject to being on the front page of WikiLeaks, Drudge, New York Times.
Right. Well, it destroys the ability to do diplomacy. Right. You can't. The game is gone. So that's weird too. I mean, because when I know Hillary, Hillary's in trouble in some ways for saying, oh, well, you say one thing to the public and another thing in private. But you have to do that. That's the way government works. You're negotiating. You're playing people against each other. That's politic. That's the way it goes. I mean, could you imagine if every negotiation, everything you said to everyone all the time was broadcast, that everything you said was on the show, everything? I mean, it's not that you have secrets, it's that there's better timing to do things, and it's, okay, this is a secret, don't talk about this just yet because we don't really know, and I don't...
Right.
It's just reality. If you don't have that, it's kind of radical. It's going to be a radically egalitarian and kind of scary on a bunch of levels, but that's only the precursor. I mean, now that they're using security cameras with Chinese chips and to do botnet attacks, the stability of the internet is, the internet has much less functional integrity than the banking industry wants to believe, and their reluctance to build a secure network and rather to piggyback on the one that already existed, I think was a tremendous mistake. You can't have Netflix and my WordPress website and Bank of America on the same network. That's just kind of silly.
And what do you think is, I'm curious what you think just on a conceptual level of WikiLeaks, because you're making a good point that, like, hey, listen, diplomacy's been changed forever. If they're going to leak everything, if you're trying to get three people with different agendas to see things in a certain way to sort of have some resolution or even kick the can down the road so people don't blow each other up, like, if you're trying to work North Korea, South Korea, China, and Putin, I mean, these are, and us and our interest and Middle East interest all around North Korea obtaining nuclear weapons, like, everybody's got a different horse in the race. There's no way to do that in a transparent way.
No, discretion is paramount.
Right.
But what WikiLeaks is responding to is the failure of the Fourth Estate, the failure of the press to do its job. Right? The press did not do its job before the Gulf War. The press doesn't do its job against Wall Street. The press doesn't do its job. It didn't do its job in Trump's nomination and vetting. And so when they don't do their job, there's this sort of reaction to of a WikiLeaks to be like, well, here, then just blah! Here's everything. And you compare that to Snowden and the way Snowden's facts were released. When the Guardian has them, the Times have them, they decide, well, this is appropriate, this is in the public interest.
Yeah.
That's responsible professional journalism, what people go to J school for. I mean, that's real.
And that's good.
And that is good.
Yeah.
And
WikiLeaks' approach is very dangerous and haphazard in my mind.
Right, but people can't yet separate, they don't understand what's the difference between doing appropriate journalism and being in the pocket of the politicians. They don't understand that doing appropriate journalism doesn't mean you're part of the problem. It means that there's balance, there's codes of conduct, there's all these things that we developed over a long period of time that now, they're not required anymore. You can be a presidential candidate without doing what you're supposed to do.
Well, there we are. We got there. For historical purposes, we're taping this the month before the election, or less. And we have the emergence, and this is very interesting from a Doug Rushkoff perspective, of a reality TV star, narcissist, master of social media, who somehow won the Republican nomination, and at one point was ahead of the most qualified person, maybe imperfect in some ways, but probably the most qualified presidential candidate we've had, ever maybe. I don't know where Hillary stands in terms of the last 20 presidents in terms of qualifications, but she's up there. How did this occur? What does it say about our society that Donald Trump got the nomination, that a presidential debate included interrupting and bringing ex-liaisons and/or rape victims of a candidate's spouse? I mean, it seems like bedlam. It seems like a level of insanity that nobody could have ever predicted. It's like a Black Mirror or Twilight Zone episode that's actually our lives. How does your decades of studying this stuff reconcile it? You must be looking at it going, either I told you so, or my God, I can't believe this actually occurred.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of an I told you so. And not just from an ego perspective, but Donald Trump is a candidate of what we would call the digital media environment. It doesn't mean that he uses the net well. Hillary uses the net better, in terms of actual, but he's like
converting votes.
Right.
Yeah,
but
more scientific.
Yes, but the way Trump speaks is like the comments after any one of our articles. He's a troll. He's like an internet troll or a reality TV contestant or the two main biases of digital technology are, one, compared to analog, it's discrete. Everything is broken up into, yes, no, this, that, up, So where in a television media environment, which was about embracing the whole globe, you ended up with a Ronald Reagan going to the Brandenburg Gates and saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Yeah. In an internet era, you get Donald Trump saying, let's build a wall. Yeah. Let's break it up. Yes, no. Are you Canadian or American? Which are you? This or that? It's only one or the other. You're with me or against me. The other big thing you get in a digital media environment is memory. The whole thing is built on memory. All of our chips, it's all memory. So what do you get is a hearkening back. Make America great again. It's a false memory, but it's memory. Same as Brexit. Brexit is about, no, we are not them. Let's put the wall back up. It's them and us. England is separate and apart because we remember, Hail Britannia, whatever, we remember back. So, it's those biases are there, and that's why he comes up. But really what's happening on the simplest level, the way the internet works is the people that are celebrated are not the thing we're celebrating. It's like they jump into a standing wave and then ride it. So you look at the Donald Trump thing is the Charlie Sheen thing, just in politics.
So when he was a train wreck, addicted to cocaine,
and we followed,
hookers,
he jumped in,
getting HIV,
right.
Like that whole train wreck, because of social media and the fact that he doesn't have to ask permission to reach the entire world. He can just go off the reservation, jump the fence, and act insane.
And if our entire economy and our entire media space is based on attention, attention economy writ large, more so than in the network television age, it's all attention, billions of dollars on attention. What are we going to pay attention to? That. And as long as he jumps into the standing wave, that's why his policies seem to change so much. That's why the standing wave was this sort of white nationalist, white male nationalist thing. That was the hidden agenda that came up. I mean, this goes back to my book, Media Virus, that all you have to do is figure out what is the unexpressed agenda of the underculture and then become a shell for that, and it will fill you and ride you along.
And he's a New Yorker, a liberal, a Hillary supporter.
I know.
Pro gay marriage. Obviously, a Democrat, obviously a liberal, obviously into drug reform, like he just figured out that like, wow, I can get this vote, like you're saying, I can attach myself to these, people who want to remember a time when white people were not, told to stop white-splaining.
And part of what happened to him, and I do feel really bad for him on a lot of levels. I think part
That's
of
the first time I've heard anybody say
no,
that. Why?
I think because I think he only knows how to relate to the people who are in the room with him.
He just panders.
He panders because he wants to be like, and you know what that's like when I'm feeling it. It's like, I want you to like me, I'm gonna do, I know how to sell. So he's a person who's lived in $1 billion debt all the time.
Right.
And he basically knows the only way he's gonna get to keep going is by selling the people in the room with him right now.
Right.
What do I have to say? What do I have to say? What do I have to say? So when he's in a room with 10,000 people who are there at a rally, he's gonna say what they need. What he can't visualize is the television audience.
Right.
He can't see them. He can't, because he's got some minor autism or something. He can't, think out there. And if you can't think out there, Hillary is not in the room with anyone here, right? You don't exist. But she's already looking right through you.
And the demographic that she needs.
Exactly.
And she's cementing them in.
And she knows what needs to be communicated to them.
Premeditated.
Right.
That's where people go, oh, I wish she wasn't as scripted. I wish she would just be a little more authentic.
Right.
Why isn't she more authentic? What's your take on Hillary then as a
Well, she's gotten so attacked. You know why she's not authentic? Is because when she was her authentic self, as the wife to the first-term governor, Bill Clinton, in Arkansas, she was the reason why he didn't win re-election. Because she was this weird, nerdy, northern strain, and she got the image consultants, and she got what's his face, Dick Morris, and that was when she went to war. And and every time she goes to war and she gets so attacked, and the Bill Clinton thing and the Monica Lewinsky thing, I mean, it just I think it's made it impossible for her to see these situations as anything but warfare.
Right. If all you've done is go to war, you are going to be a wartime consigliere.
Right.
Like that's what she is. She's just like a wartime CEO, a wartime candidate.
Right. And the question is whether, when she's in office, will she be able to go, I could be the mother of this country and help, break down this patriarchal, hegemonic insanity and show some love. But I don't know that that's really in her makeup.
Why didn't, talking about media, Trump was so close to winning that if he had simply dialed back 20% of the crazy and been on on message, maybe 10% of the time, maybe 30% of the time, he would have demolished her.
You know what?
Why couldn't he, and is he not want the job?
He didn't want it.
Or was he a crazy narcissist?
Well, he was a crazy narcissist. It's all about him. Even now when he's talking about losing, he did not want the job.
Okay.
He really didn't want the job.
I'm in the camp with you. I don't think he wanted the job. So why did he do it? Just for the narcissistic pleasure?
Yeah, and he didn't think it would get this far. It was going to be so great for his brand and this,
Yeah. How'd that work out? His brand is destroyed, right?
Oh, I think so. Would you going to go move into a Trump tower? You want to write that on your address?
Oh my God! Some people took the Trump name off their tower. I heard in Chicago or something. And people are lobbying like, I bought into a Trump building. Now my property value's gone down.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But
he could have won so easily. If you and I sat with him in a room and we were his strategists, we could have so easily just said, okay, here's what's resonating.
I had great answers for him for every attack that was coming too. Or he could have pulled. I think it would have been fun to pull the I'm actually a Democrat thing. There were so many things he could have done.
Yeah.
Or, that was all fake.
That would have been an interesting one.
Yeah.
Listen, I did what I had to do to win the Republican nomination. Let me tell you where my actual agenda.
Yeah.
The wall is, interesting, but really what I'm about is lowering taxes and just creating jobs. And
Right.
That's it.
Or even just speak clearly about, we have entrenched powers in Washington.
Corruption.
The corruption is just huge, and I understand I've done really icky things and I'm kind of a pervert and whatever, but
However,
I'm married now, I'm a good guy. Doesn't matter if I'm a good guy. Look at Kennedy. Look at all these guys.
Can you
that's not the
imagine
thing.
he came out and
right.
defended the third debate?
But what I can do is actually turn around. But he's not actually articulate.
God, you should have been.
No puppet. He can't say it.
His advisor, and you said to him, hey, listen, just do a mea culpa for the fact that you are a pervert and tell everybody you're better now, you have a great wife, and listen, the corruption is the bigger issue here, and listen, this whole thing might have been a bit of a joke, and listen, yeah, sure, I'm a bit of a narcissist, I know that, I did a reality TV show for 10 years, you all know I'm a narcissist, but now that I've learned this, gosh, and I talked to my chief of staff, Doug Rushkoff, I think the corruption in Washington is crazy. We have a once in a lifetime, maybe a once in the history of this country chance to change the two-party system. Why don't you come along with me, and I'm going to listen to everybody. I mean, I brought Doug Rushkoff out on my chief of staff. We're going to just listen to everybody, and we're going to try to solve these problems together. But corruption is the number one. Can you imagine? It would have just been like, boom.
Yeah, but he couldn't do that because he's probably insane. He's probably...
He is insane, right?
Yeah. He's not stable enough.
It does seem like somebody made this joke about cocaine or something like that, but his behavior is so manic, it does make you think he's on some kind of...
Well, right, and the sniffing reminds me of people who, they do a whole bunch of coke, and then like 20 minutes in, you can, just to get another little pebble or two, a little couple of drops, yeah, back into action.
What is with the sniffing thing? It's crazy.
Exactly, I can't imagine it's anything else.
All right, listen.
Speaking of throwing rock. Throwing rock.
He's banging rocks. Are you, through all of this, optimistic about humanity and the future of our species? You've spent your life studying humanity, media, and technology, and how this has evolved. And listen, it's been and you've been so right about so many things. Are you optimistic that as a species we're going to do the right things to solve the big problems we have, or are you pessimistic and you think, God, there's just too many agendas, and the control of the media sphere is, in the hands of so few, and it's just all going to implode, and the world.
I'll tell you this.
In a handbasket. I'm curious.
My only answer, I don't really know, but I do know that, writing this book is sort of the end of a certain strategy. So this is
an arc for you.
Yeah, this is the truth about how the economy works, how business is working, what we can do to save our businesses, what we can do to save the economy, and why that would ultimately then solve global warming and all those other issues. Because if we're no longer strapped to our debt structure, then we don't have to grow artificially just to please a number. We can actually have a circulatory, sustainable economy. A sustainable economy leads to a sustainable planet. You bring back labor to the table, you bring back land to the table, and then you have land, labor, capital, yay. But what I'm realizing is, and while this is important for business and policymakers and all that, the facts don't actually change people. A brilliant forensic analysis of where we went wrong and a policy statement on what we need to actually do to change our companies is not as important as getting into almost a deeper place in people's brains. And that's why I'm going back to, television, graphic novels, my podcast. I feel like it's believe it or not, that it is the creative, the creatives. It's the content and the 12-year, if you reach 12 to 18-year-olds with content that's structured differently, in other words, if it's not about, and this is what we were talking about with millennials, is if it's not about these stories that you try and fight and kill and then win, and then you're the victor, then we won't have these kind of crazy Donald Trumpian, I can do it heroes. And instead, we will have people who are thinking in a much more networked way, in a much more lateral peer-to-peer way. Peer-to-peer business strategies are not something that happen from the top down. Peer-to-peer business strategies happen because it's the way people actually want to interact.
If you're a CEO or a VC, in fact, you don't want a peer-to-peer thing like you're talking about because you lose command and control.
Right.
And you really need command and control to optimize the outcome for your own return.
For your own return in the short term. But what I'm arguing in this book is make your customers rich, make your vendors rich, make your suppliers rich, make everyone in your ecosystem wealthy, and then you can circulate money rather than just extract it.
All right, listen, we could talk for hours, and we have many times. The book is Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus. The author is Douglas Rushkoff, one of the smartest people I've known in this lifetime, and one of the most fun and generous with his ideas and thoughts. What an amazing hour. Everybody go buy the book and listen. Another idea, listen to it on Audible, because you do it yourself.
I do it myself. So I make the arguments.
Do that because it's
my arguments. I'm the only one who knows. And I've listened to actors read my books. Throwing rocks at the Google bus.
A novel by Douglas Rushkoff.
And if it's me just saying,
It's so much more authentic. Yeah. I'm meeting with my publisher tomorrow, and that's one of the lines in the stand I have is, I am going to read the book.
You'll get an extra $3,500.
I don't want the $35. Well, here's the thing. It's not like our voices are made for radio. We're not like these incredible
but our voices are made for our words.
I agree. I am so infuriated.
No one else knows your cadence but you.
When people don't read their own book, I feel like they don't stand behind it. Or they've been snowed by their publisher into not doing it. The only exception is like maybe a novel or something like that. We have voice actors. Like I have The Hobbit.
When you get what's in a Wesley Crusher doing Ready Player One. Perfect. That's almost the best novel reading.
Best possible scenario is getting Will Wheaton to read your thing like that. What, are you going to do a graphic novel?
I just did one called Alistair and Adolf, about a fictional occult war between Aleister Crowley and Adolf Hitler at the end of World War II.
When is this out?
November 2nd, so it's out.
Really?
Yes. I have a gift copy for you.
Awesome, I cannot wait. I think this is the perfect place for you to play because you know what? When you write serious stuff, it puts people in a certain mindset. But when you write a graphic novel, it lets them open it up and then the message can come after the story. Yeah. It's very smart on your part. All right, thanks so much for being on the program. Thank you. And thank you to my friends at RGA for setting up their studio and staying late with me as I do these interviews. We could not have done it without you. Everybody go ahead and thank RGA and RGA Ventures on your Twitter and your Facebook and Snapchat and MySpace and Friendster, LinkedIn, everything. Thank everybody everywhere. And we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.
Our iTunes review of the week is from SD Cody. It's my muse for creative problem solving. Jason is not afraid to ask the questions that we all have been wondering. If you're a fan of Twist, please leave us a nice review on iTunes.